The 1960s were a golden era for American luxury cars. Amid the muscle car boom and the rise of affordable family sedans, a handful of vehicles catered exclusively to the wealthiest Americans, celebrities, executives, and industrial magnates. These cars were not built for practicality or fuel efficiency. They were rolling statements of power, wealth, and refinement. Sleek, stylish, and extravagantly equipped, they remained symbols of 1960s opulence.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 10. The 1961 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz convertible was the epitome of early 1960s American luxury, a gleaming, chrome-drenched status symbol for the wealthy and powerful. Costing around $7,000 when new, a small fortune at the time, it represented Cadillac's unwavering commitment to excess, comfort, and technological prestige. While other automakers were inching toward compact cars, Cadillac doubled down on grandeur, creating one of the most lavish and technologically advanced convertibles ever produced in the pre-muscle car era. Engine: 390 cubic inch or 6.4 liters V8, producing 325 horsepower. Transmission: Hydra-Matic 4-speed automatic, buttery smooth but heavy. Drivetrain: rear-wheel drive. Curb weight: over 4,800 pounds. Fuel economy: around 9 to 11 miles per gallon, typical for its class but dismal by modern standards. Despite its weight, the Eldorado's massive torque and refined automatic transmission delivered a serene, effortless driving experience. The emphasis wasn't on raw performance, but on graceful power. The car glided rather than accelerated, giving drivers the sensation of commanding a rolling palace. The 1961 Eldorado Biarritz was packed with every gadget Cadillac's engineers could imagine. Power-operated convertible top, hydraulically controlled, 6-way power seats, power windows and power vent wings, automatic headlight dimmer, Autronic eye, power antenna and signal-seeking AM radio, optional air conditioning, still a rare luxury in convertibles, deep pile carpeting and hand-stitched leather upholstery. Every surface inside the car exuded wealth, from polished chrome details to soft padded door panels. Cadillac wanted passengers to feel as though they were in a first-class lounge on wheels. The 1961 redesign marked Cadillac's transition from the flamboyant 1950s fins towards sleeker, more sculpted lines. The Biarritz still carried tail fins, but they were more restrained and elegant, tapering gracefully instead of shooting skyward. The massive chrome grille, bullet-shaped tail lamps, and wide commanding stance ensured it still turned heads anywhere it went. The car's proportions were monumental, over 18 feet long, nearly 7 feet wide, a true boulevard cruiser. Its sheer presence screamed success and sophistication. Although stunning, the Eldorado Biarritz convertible had its downsides. Complex electrical systems often failed. Power accessories were advanced but unreliable. Heavy weight made handling sluggish, and braking distances were long. Fuel consumption was atrocious, especially during the early 1960s fuel scares. Convertible top mechanisms were prone to hydraulic leaks and alignment issues. Still, none of that mattered to its buyers. The Biarritz wasn't about practicality, it was about prestige. The Eldorado Biarritz convertible was Cadillac's crown jewel, a statement car for the elite. It was favored by celebrities, politicians, and business magnates who valued exclusivity. With only 1,450 units produced, it was among the rarest and most desirable Cadillacs of its era. It embodied the American dream of excess, massive, confident, and unapologetically luxurious. It arrived just before the social and economic shifts of the mid-1960s that would make such excess seem out of touch. Today, the 1961 Eldorado Biarritz is considered a collector's masterpiece, a symbol of Cadillac's golden era when comfort and craftsmanship mattered more than efficiency. Its chrome, fins, and elegant presence make it one of the most recognizable American convertibles ever built. It represents a moment in time when Cadillac reigned supreme, when luxury meant size, silence, and shine, not screens or software. The Eldorado Biarritz wasn't just a car. It was a statement of power, wealth, and pure automotive theater.
Number 9. The 1963 Lincoln Continental Convertible. This wasn't just a car. It was a rolling statement of power, grace, and mid-century American confidence. When the Continental debuted in 1961, it redefined luxury car design. Under Elwood Engel's minimalist direction, Lincoln abandoned the bloated excesses of the 1950s for something bold, modern, and architectural. The 1963 model, part of that first generation, carried on this clean, slab-sided aesthetic, long, straight lines, flat panels, and crisp edges. There was no gaudy chrome, no flamboyant fins, just precision and proportion. Even today, designers praise its understated elegance. The 1963 Continental looked like it was carved from a single block of steel, dignified, confident, and unmistakably American. Perhaps the most distinctive feature of the Continental was its rear-hinged suicide doors. While they harkened back to pre-war luxury cars, on the Continental they became a design statement. These doors made entry and exit effortless, particularly important when one was wearing a suit or evening gown. They also created an aura of formality and occasion. It's no coincidence that this car was chosen as the official presidential limousine for John F. Kennedy. The Continental became synonymous with American leadership, both for its elegance and its symbolic restraint. Beneath the beauty was solid engineering. The 1963 Continental featured a 430 cubic inch MEL V8, producing around 320 horsepower. Though not a sports car, it moved with smooth, quiet authority, the kind of effortless thrust that wealthy buyers expected. Power steering, power brakes, automatic transmission, and electric windows were all standard. Lincoln emphasized isolation from noise and vibration. The Continental didn't just transport its passengers, it insulated them from the chaos of the outside world. But the convertible version was a marvel of engineering complexity. Because it lacked a B-pillar, it required a hydraulic system with over a dozen relays and solenoids to manage the retractable top and deck lid. It was impressive, but also infamously finicky to maintain. By 1963, luxury cars often shouted their wealth, but the Lincoln whispered it. Where Cadillac and Imperial flaunted chrome and ornamentation, Lincoln relied on proportion, poise, and precision. The interior continued this theme, simple, elegant, and inviting. Deep leather seats, restrained chrome trim, and a square steering wheel, unique for Lincoln, created an environment of modern confidence rather than old-world indulgence. This was luxury for the serious man, the executive, the statesman, the thinker. It was the car for people who didn't need to prove their success because it was already obvious. The Continental convertible quickly became an American status symbol. It appeared in films, fashion shoots, and, tragically, in history books. The 1961 presidential limousine, SS-100X, based on the same design, was the car in which President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. That event forever intertwined the Continental with American memory, a symbol of both elegance and tragedy. Afterward, Lincoln continued to build the model until 1967, but no later convertible would capture the same mystique. The 1963 Lincoln Continental convertible marked the final golden age of handcrafted American luxury. By the late 1960s, safety regulations, emissions controls, and rising production costs ended the era of such bold design and open-top prestige cars. Today, surviving Continentals are prized collector's pieces, not just for their beauty, but for what they represent, a time when American luxury meant quiet power, not excess. The 1963 Lincoln Continental convertible was more than a luxury car. It was an architectural statement, a cultural icon, and a reflection of American dignity. Its legacy lives on as one of the most timeless designs in automotive history, a machine that blended innovation with restraint, power with poise, and beauty with purpose. In an era obsessed with flash, the Continental dared to be calm. And that, perhaps, is why it remains unforgettable.
Number 8. The 1965 Imperial Crown Coupe. This was Chrysler's peak statement of luxury, power, and exclusivity. A car that dared to stand beside Cadillac and Lincoln, yet remained a class unto itself. By 1965, the Imperial nameplate had existed for more than a decade as Chrysler's standalone luxury division, much like Cadillac was for General Motors. It wasn't merely a fancy Chrysler. It was meant to be America's Rolls-Royce, handcrafted, expensive, and exclusive. The Imperial Crown Coupe represented the pinnacle of this vision, a car built not for the masses, but for the elite few who demanded refinement, silence, and authority on the road. Unlike the flashier Cadillacs of the same era, the 1965 Imperial projected power through precision. It wasn't ostentatious, it was commanding. It exuded the quiet arrogance of an executive who owned the company, not the salesman who worked for it. The 1965 Imperial was the work of Elwood Engel, the same designer who had revolutionized Lincoln's image just a few years earlier with the slab-sided Continental. When Chrysler hired Engel away from Ford, they gave him creative freedom, and the result was one of the most sophisticated luxury coupes of the decade. The Crown Coupe rode on a 129-inch wheelbase, giving it proportions that balanced size with grace. Its lines were clean, squared off, and dignified, a departure from the tail-finned excess of the 1950s. The front fascia featured a bold, upright grille framed by quad headlamps set in chrome bezels, giving it an unmistakable regal expression. The taillights, encased in polished metal housings, were deeply set and formal. The overall effect was less Detroit flamboyance and more American authority, an automobile that looked equally at home outside the Capitol or a five-star hotel. Step inside, and the Imperial greeted its driver like the cockpit of a luxury airliner. Chrysler borrowed cues directly from the aviation world, and it showed. The instrument panel featured aircraft-inspired gauges, with individual pods set into a sculpted dash that curved toward the driver. The controls were futuristic for their time, including electroluminescent lighting that made the gauges glow a soft blue-green at night, a visual signature unique to Imperial. And then there was the push-button transmission selector, mounted conveniently on the dash. Instead of a shift lever, the driver simply pressed a button: drive, reverse, neutral. It was both futuristic and effortless, like commanding a spacecraft. Luxury materials were everywhere: thick leather upholstery, chrome accents, deep pile carpeting, and power everything. Windows, seats, and antenna all standard. Even the trunk was lined like a fine piece of luggage. Under the hood, the 1965 Imperial Crown Coupe housed Chrysler's formidable 413 cubic inch V8, producing 340 horsepower and a tidal wave of torque. It wasn't about speed, it was about seamless, effortless motion.
The power steering was feather-light, the ride was cloud-like thanks to torsion bar front suspension, and the cabin was insulated with layers of sound-deadening material. Chrysler engineers prided themselves on achieving library quiet at highway speeds. And unlike many Cadillacs of the era, the Imperial was built on a unique, heavy-duty frame, not a unibody. This made it incredibly solid, nearly indestructible in construction, but also expensive to produce. The weight topped 5,000 pounds, but buyers didn't mind. In fact, they expected it. The Imperial Crown Coupe was never a common sight. Production numbers were low, just a few thousand per year, and ownership carried a certain air of exclusivity. While Cadillacs filled suburban driveways and Lincolns chauffeured corporate executives, the Imperial was the choice of those who didn't follow trends. You didn't buy an Imperial to impress. You bought it because you already had everything else. It was a car for quiet wealth, for those who valued craftsmanship over flash. Despite its excellence, the Imperial brand struggled. Chrysler never gave it the marketing muscle or dealership separation that Cadillac enjoyed. By the late 1960s, even as the Imperial continued to offer unmatched luxury, the name had become obscure. The 1965 model, however, marked the end of Imperial's purest era, when the brand still had its own frame, body, and character, separate from Chrysler's mainstream lineup. Later models would become increasingly badge-engineered, losing the majesty that once defined them. Today, the 1965 Imperial Crown Coupe stands as one of the finest American luxury cars ever built, yet one of the least remembered. It represented a time when Chrysler dared to challenge Cadillac and Lincoln on their own turf, and in many ways outclassed them. From its aircraft-inspired dash to its push-button controls, it embodied the optimism and precision of early 1960s, a nation that still believed technology and design could solve everything. For collectors today, the Imperial is a hidden gem. Commanding presence, bulletproof construction, and a level of refinement that rivals anything from its era. The 1965 Imperial Crown Coupe was more than just a car. It was a throne on wheels, built for the few who demanded nothing less than perfection. It reflected the height of Chrysler's engineering pride and American luxury ambition. It may not have worn the Cadillac crest or the Lincoln Star, but the Imperial Crown Coupe held its own coot, and for a brief, shining moment in 1965, it was the true king of American road royalty.
Number 7. The 1967 Cadillac Fleetwood 75 Limousine. A car that wasn't just transportation, but a declaration of power, privilege, and prestige. In the 1960s, when America stood tall as a global symbol of prosperity, no automobile better represented the nation's elite than this hand-built luxury liner. Whether it carried heads of state, corporate tycoons, or Hollywood royalty, the Fleetwood 75 limousine was more than a car. It was a throne on wheels. By the mid-1960s, Cadillac had firmly established itself as the automotive symbol of success. But the Fleetwood 75 limousine occupied a world far above the average luxury car. This was not a model you simply purchased. It was ordered, often custom-tailored for political figures, ambassadors, or celebrities who wanted the absolute best that American craftsmanship could produce. The base price in 1967 hovered around $10,500, more than 3 times the cost of a standard Chevrolet sedan, and in an era when the average American home cost less than that. This limousine was never meant for common roads or common people. It was reserved for the few who defined power and wealth. The Fleetwood 75 was hand-built by Cadillac's Fleetwood division in Detroit, a process that emphasized craftsmanship over mass production. Each car was assembled by specialized teams, ensuring that every door closed with a perfect vault-like thud and every panel aligned with surgical precision. The body was stretched to a commanding 244 inches in length, giving the car a regal, almost ceremonial presence. The long rear doors and extended roofline hinted at its purpose, to carry dignitaries in privacy and comfort. The front of the limousine was defined by Cadillac's classic vertical grille and stacked headlamps, framed by an ocean of chrome. The crest and wreath emblem atop the hood wasn't just decoration, it was an insignia of rank, one that instantly commanded respect. The interior of the 1967 Fleetwood 75 was divided into two distinct realms, the chauffeur's compartment and the passenger salon. The driver's area was trimmed in durable leather and featured Cadillac's advanced dashboard with elegant wood grain accents. But simplicity was key. This was a workspace. The chauffeur was there to serve, not to indulge. Beyond the glass partition, however, the rear cabin transformed into a mobile drawing room. Thick broadcloth or leather upholstery, folding jump seats, and deep pile carpeting created an atmosphere of complete serenity. Optional features included rear climate control, power glass divider, AM/FM radio with rear controls, and even telephone hookups for executive communication. The rear doors opened wide enough for an effortless entrance, and passengers could stretch out fully or hold meetings in motion. For diplomats, it was a private embassy on wheels. For the wealthy, it was a traveling sanctuary away from public eyes. Under the immense hood, the 1967 Fleetwood 75 was powered by Cadillac's 429 cubic inch V8, producing 340 horsepower and a tremendous 480 pound-feet of torque. This engine was mated to the turbo-hydromatic 400 transmission, delivering buttery-smooth shifts. Despite its size, weighing nearly 6,000 pounds, the limousine could glide along effortlessly at highway speeds, insulated from road noise, vibration, or wind. The suspension was tuned for maximum comfort, and the power steering and brakes made piloting this massive machine surprisingly manageable. Yet Cadillac's engineers designed it to glide, not rush. Every journey was meant to be serene, dignified, and utterly silent. Cadillac even used additional sound insulation and thicker glass than in its standard models, ensuring that the cabin remained as quiet as a library, a feature that made it ideal for government and diplomatic use. The Fleetwood 75 wasn't just another luxury car. It was the preferred carriage of presidents, governors, and world leaders. Many U.S. officials and foreign dignitaries were chauffeured in these limousines during state visits and parades throughout the 1960s. Hollywood stars like Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley also favored the Fleetwood 75, drawn to its unmatched comfort and exclusivity. The car became a status symbol of the American dream realized, a physical embodiment of success. In the cultural imagination of the time, if you arrived in a Fleetwood 75, you had already conquered the world. The 1967 model marked the final evolution of Cadillac's classic mid-1960s styling, elegant, formal, and unburdened by the excess chrome and fins of previous decades. The stacked headlamps, crisp body lines, and massive scale defined late 1960s luxury design. In later years, the Fleetwood 75 would continue, but the handcrafted nature and sheer grandeur of the 1967 model remain unmatched. It was one of the last limousines built before federal safety and emissions regulations began to tame the power and individuality of American luxury. Today, the 1967 Cadillac Fleetwood 75 limousine stands as a relic of pre-regulation opulence, a reminder of when craftsmanship, scale, and prestige ruled without compromise. The 1967 Cadillac Fleetwood 75 limousine wasn't just a car. It was a mobile institution, a rolling monument to American craftsmanship and class hierarchy. It carried presidents, movie stars, and magnates, projecting power with every foot of chrome and every inch of its 20-foot frame. In an era before private jets became common, this was the next best thing, the embodiment of wealth and influence on the open road. It was, quite literally, the living room of America's ruling class, and the road beneath it, their private red carpet.
Number 6. The 1964 Chrysler 300K convertible. A car that bridged two worlds, the raw, unrefined strength of the early muscle era and the polished dignity of a luxury grand tourer. The 300K wasn't for the young drag racer or the suburban commuter. It was a car for the executive class, for men who ruled from corner offices and wanted a machine that could roar with authority but cruise in utter silence when discretion was required. The 300K belonged to Chrysler's famed Letter series, a lineage that began in 1955 with the Chrysler 300, America's first true luxury performance car. Each subsequent model, from the 300B through to the 300L, carried a single letter designation that represented exclusivity, craftsmanship, and engineering excellence. By 1964, the 300K was the 9th installment in that proud tradition, inheriting nearly a decade of refinement. The letter cars were never built for mass appeal. They were low-production, high-prestige machines, designed for people who valued sophistication as much as speed. The 300K continued this dual identity, a muscle car in a tuxedo. Under the hood, the 1964 Chrysler 300K housed the legendary 413 cubic inch wedge V8, an engine that delivered 360 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. For buyers who wanted more, Chrysler offered an optional dual 4-barrel carburetor setup, pushing power beyond 390 horses. This was not a temperamental racing engine, it was a grand touring powerhouse, capable of launching the 4,300-pound convertible from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds, all while maintaining the poise and smoothness expected of a luxury automobile. Mated to the TorqueFlite 3-speed automatic transmission, it provided seamless shifts and effortless highway performance. On the open road, the 300K didn't scream or rattle, it glided with commanding authority. It was a car designed to dominate the left lane with quiet confidence. Visually, the 1964 Chrysler 300K convertible embodied restrained power. Gone were the flamboyant fins and exaggerated chrome of the 1950s. In their place stood a long, clean silhouette that emphasized balance and proportion. The wide grille and squared-off front end gave it an imposing presence, while the smooth flanks and crisp character lines suggested speed even at rest. The convertible top folded neatly behind the rear seats, transforming the car into an open-air statement of affluence. Inside, the 300K exuded quiet sophistication. The leather bucket seats, center console, and full array of aircraft-style gauges reflected Chrysler's obsession with detail. Every control felt deliberate, the sort of tactile quality found in fine wristwatches. Buyers could choose optional power windows, air conditioning, and AM/FM signal-seeking radio, reinforcing its dual nature, fast enough for Daytona, yet comfortable enough for a boardroom commute. Chrysler marketed the 300K as the gentleman's sports car, and it wasn't an exaggeration. The typical buyer wasn't a teenager looking to race. He was more likely a business owner or high-ranking manager who wanted something faster than his Cadillac but just as dignified. At over $5,000, nearly double the price of a Mustang that same year, the 300K was a status symbol as much as a performance machine. Its limited production, fewer than 625 convertibles built, made it exclusive even among the wealthy. Behind the wheel, the 300K felt heavy yet composed. The torsion bar front suspension and stiff frame provided excellent stability at high speeds, though steering response remained more relaxed than aggressive. It was designed not for tight corners, but for long, fast, confident journeys, exactly the sort of roads executives preferred to conquer. What makes the 300K remarkable in hindsight is how it stood apart from the raw muscle cars that would soon dominate the American landscape. By 1964, Pontiac's GTO and Ford's Fairline Thunderbolt were already rewriting performance culture, prioritizing brute force over grace. The 300K refused to follow that trend. It offered discipline, taste, and maturity. It was about control, not chaos, a car that delivered high-speed serenity rather than adolescent thrill. In that sense, it was America's Aston Martin, not its Mustang. Sadly, the 1964 Chrysler 300K marked the beginning of the end for the letter series. Sales declined as younger buyers gravitated towards cheaper, flashier muscle cars, and Chrysler found itself without a clear market for its refined performance machines. By 1965, the 300L would close the chapter on one of America's greatest luxury performance legacies. The age of the Gentleman's Express was fading, replaced by the brash, tire-smoking energy of the late 1960s. Yet the 300K remains one of the most underrated classics of its time, a car that embodied Chrysler's peak engineering excellence and timeless design philosophy. The 1964 Chrysler 300K convertible was not a car for the masses. It was a car for men who had already arrived. It blended luxury with lethal speed, elegance with endurance, and civility with raw American muscle. It wasn't the fastest and it wasn't the flashiest, but it represented something rare, controlled power, a car that could race to 130 miles per hour in silence while the driver sipped his coffee and adjusted the radio. In a decade obsessed with youth and rebellion, the 300K was something far rarer, a machine for grown men who didn't need to prove anything. It was the gentleman's muscle car and the last of a noble breed.
Number 5. In the early 1960s, before the muscle car era and long before downsizing became fashionable, Buick stood proudly as America's upper-middle-class symbol of success. For those who wanted something more refined than an Oldsmobile, but less ostentatious than a Cadillac, the Buick Electra 225 Limited was the ultimate statement of achievement, the car for the man who had made it, but didn't need to shout about it. The 1962 Electra 225, affectionately nicknamed Deuce and a Quarter for its 225-inch overall length, was Buick's flagship model, an enormous, chrome-draped monument to comfort, craftsmanship, and quiet authority. Buick had long carved out a unique position in General Motors' hierarchy. While Chevrolet and Pontiac appealed to the masses and Cadillac served the elite, Buick catered to the professionals, the doctors, bankers, and business owners who wanted prestige without flamboyance. The Electra 225 Limited was the pinnacle of that philosophy. It was not about showing off. It was about living well, quietly. Every inch of the car radiated the message that its owner had refined taste and probably a reserved parking space downtown. The 1962 redesign of the Electra 225 was a study in early 60s American opulence. Long, low, and impossibly wide, the car's proportions gave it a regal stance, a look of authority that dominated any driveway. The front fascia featured a bold vertical grille framed by stacked quad headlights, setting a tone of formal sophistication. Along the sides, chrome moldings traced the full length of the car, accentuating its sheer size. The tail fins of the 1950s were finally gone, replaced with sculpted rear quarters that reflected modern restraint. Buick designers didn't forget the luxury cues. Triple Venti ports still adorned the front fenders, a tradition since the late 1940s, symbolizing power and prestige. The Electra T25 script and crest gleamed proudly above the rear wheel wells, marking it as the flagship of the Buick family. Inside, the 225 Limited was more drawing room than automobile. Plush upholstery, deep pile carpeting, real wood accents, and aircraft-inspired dashboard details created an environment of serene indulgence. The rear seat was as spacious as a sofa, with armrests, courtesy lights, and optional air conditioning, a rarity even among luxury cars at the time. Underneath all that chrome and carpet, the Electra 225 packed serious mechanical substance. Buick's Wildcat 445 V8, a 401 cubic inch powerhouse, delivered 325 horsepower and 445 pound-feet of torque, earning its name from that torque figure alone. Paired with the twin-turbine Dynaflow, the transmission power delivery was buttery smooth, not abrupt or dramatic. The Electra wasn't built for drag strips, it was built for effortless highway cruising, where it could float along at 80 miles per hour with the driver barely aware of the engine's presence. The ride quality, thanks to Buick's sophisticated suspension and thick sound insulation, was nothing short of silken. Road imperfections vanished beneath its weight. Reviewers of the time called it whisper quiet, like riding inside a cloud made of chrome and wool. The 1962 Electra 225 Limited was brimming with technology that, for the time, bordered on the futuristic. Options included power steering, brakes, and windows, 6-way power seats, automatic headlight dimmer or Autronic eye, Sonomatic AM radio with foot tuner control, factory air conditioning, one of the best in the industry at the time, and even a tilt steering column, a feature few cars offered then. Everything in the 225 was designed to pamper the driver and passengers while maintaining Buick's hallmark reliability. It wasn't as overindulgent as a Cadillac Fleetwood, but it didn't need to be. The Electra 225 offered 90% of Cadillac's luxury for 70% of the price, a value proposition that made it especially popular with upwardly mobile professionals. What made the Electra 225 Limited culturally significant wasn't just its engineering, it was what it represented. In an era when social climbing was subtle and appearances mattered, this car was a badge of success without arrogance. It was for the executive who valued refinement over flash, the kind of man who wore tailored suits but not gold watches. The Buick customer was practical, but not modest. He knew he deserved more than a Chevrolet, yet wasn't ready to flaunt a Cadillac. In short, the Electra 225 was the car of quiet power, a rolling metaphor for the post-war American professional class. Despite its 4,300-pound curb weight, the 225 handled with surprising composure. Buick engineers had fine-tuned the suspension for comfort rather than sportiness, but the steering was light and precise at highway speeds. Braking, via large finned aluminum drums, was adequate for the era, though stopping this behemoth required a steady hand and forward planning. What it lacked in agility, it made up for in unshakable stability and peerless ride comfort. From behind the wheel, one felt detached from the outside world, cocooned in calm, luxury, and the faint hum of the 401 V8. It was an experience closer to commanding a yacht than driving a car. By 1962, the Electra 225 had cemented its place as Buick's crown jewel, the final flourish before American luxury cars became obsessed with technology and gimmicks. Later models would grow heavier and less graceful, but the early 60s Electras captured Buick's ideal balance between refinement, dignity, and mechanical excellence. Collectors today prize the 1962 Electra 225 for its timeless design, build quality, and symbolic status. It remains one of the last Buicks built in the image of a classic American luxury liner, long, confident, and utterly serene. The 1962 Buick Electra 225 Limited was not just transportation, it was a statement of success, an object of personal pride, and a masterpiece of mid-century American engineering. It offered the comfort of a Cadillac, the craftsmanship of a Lincoln, and the discretion of a Buick, all wrapped into one chrome masterpiece. Today, when we look back on the Deuce and a Quarter, we see more than a car. We see a cultural artifact from a time when prestige had class and when luxury didn't need to be loud to be felt. It was, in every sense, the gentleman's Cadillac, and one of the finest Buicks ever to grace American roads.
Number 4. By 1969, the American luxury car scene stood at its zenith, bold, oversized, and unapologetically extravagant. And at the very top of that pyramid sat the Cadillac DeVille convertible, a machine that perfectly embodied everything that defined post-war American success: size, silence, and status. It wasn't just a car, it was an announcement, a symbol that the driver had arrived, and in style. The 1969 DeVille convertible was unmistakable, measuring over 225 inches long and weighing nearly 5,000 pounds. It was a monument of American engineering excess. This wasn't a car for subtle personalities. It was built for executives, entertainers, and professionals who wanted the world to see their success. Its long, flowing lines and massive chrome bumpers reflected sunlight like polished jewelry, while the wide front grille and discreet tail fins preserved Cadillac's image of restrained elegance. At a base price of around $5,700, roughly equivalent to over $50,000 today, the DeVille convertible was an indulgence few could justify. But for those who could, it offered unmatched prestige, an open-air luxury cruiser for America's elite. Under the hood lay Cadillac's newly introduced 472 cubic inch, or 7.7-liter V8, one of the largest passenger car engines of its era. It produced 375 horsepower and 525 pound-feet of torque, enough to move its immense weight with deceptive ease. Yet what truly impressed drivers wasn't the raw speed, but the effortless silence. Cadillac engineers perfected insulation and engine balancing to such an extent that passengers often couldn't tell whether the engine was running. At highway speeds, the DeVille seemed to float, the suspension absorbing imperfections in the road like a luxury yacht gliding over calm water. The automatic transmission shifted imperceptibly, and steering was feather light, ideal for a car meant to be driven slowly and proudly down boulevards or parked in front of country clubs. Inside, the DeVille convertible offered a level of comfort that bordered on decadent. Seats were hand-stitched leather, soft and deep enough to make the driver feel like they were in an upscale living room. Chrome and wood-grain trim lined the dashboard, while every surface, from the door panels to the armrests, was padded for comfort. Amenities included power windows, 6-way power seats, automatic climate control, AM/FM radio, and power-operated convertible top. When the roof folded down, it disappeared under a hard tonneau, maintaining the car's sleek lines even in open-air mode. For passengers, cruising in a DeVille with the top down was an event, a sensory experience of luxury, wind, and whisper-quiet power. The 1969 Cadillac DeVille convertible represented the final flourish of true full-size American luxury convertibles. After 1970, changing safety regulations, emissions restrictions, and consumer tastes shifted the market towards smaller, more efficient cars. Convertibles themselves were on their way out, as concerns about rollover safety made them impractical for mass production. Thus, the 69 DeVille became one of the last of its kind, a relic of a time when American luxury meant being bigger, bolder, and softer than anything else on the road. Its blend of power, comfort, and prestige marked the high water point of Cadillac's dominance before the oil crisis and emissions laws would redefine automotive luxury in the 1970s. Today, the 1969 DeVille convertible is revered by collectors as the last great American open-top cruiser. Restored examples command respect at car shows and auctions, often celebrated for their commanding road presence and craftsmanship. It remains a reminder of when Cadillac truly was the standard of the world, a time when success wasn't whispered, but declared, with 472 cubic inches of chrome-lined confidence. The 1969 Cadillac DeVille convertible wasn't just a car. It was America's dream on four wheels. It embodied luxury without limits, comfort without compromise, and style without restraint. It was the final anthem of the classic Cadillac era, before the winds of change made such indulgence a thing of the past.
Number 3. In the mid-1960s, American luxury was evolving. Drivers wanted prestige, but they also wanted performance, excitement, and individuality. Out of that desire emerged one of General Motors' finest achievements, the 1965 Buick Riviera Grand Sport, GS. This car wasn't about chrome excess or brute horsepower alone. It was about refined power, the perfect balance between a luxury coupe and a true performance machine. The 1965 Riviera was the final evolution of Bill Mitchell's original 1963 design, and arguably the most beautiful. It featured clean, sculpted lines with hidden headlamps concealed behind clamshell covers, a signature touch that gave the front end a sleek, predatory look. The side profile was perfectly proportioned, long hood, short rear deck, and a flowing roofline that exuded sophistication. Unlike other flashy GM models of the era, the Riviera avoided gimmicks and fins. It looked powerful without trying too hard, restrained aggression wrapped in elegance. Every curve and crease was carefully considered, resulting in a timeless silhouette that rivaled European ground tours from Jaguar and Aston Martin. The 1965 model also marked the end of the first-generation Riviera, and with it, the peak of Buick's design language before later models became bulkier and less pure. Under the hood, the Grand Sport variant transformed the Riviera from a luxury cruiser into a legitimate performance car. The GS package introduced Buick's 425 cubic inch or 7-liter Super Wildcat V8, producing 360 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, massive numbers for 1965. This engine wasn't just about raw power. It was hand-assembled with dual Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors, giving it instant throttle response and deep, muscular exhaust notes. Mated to Buick's super robust super turbine 400 automatic transmission and a limited slip differential, the Riviera GS could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7 seconds, an impressive figure for a car weighing nearly 2 tons. On the highway, it was effortless. The Riviera could cruise at 100 miles per hour all day long, whispering down the interstate with almost no vibration or wind noise. Buick's engineers tuned the suspension for grand touring comfort, yet it cornered flatter than most full-size American cars of the time. Step inside, and the Riviera GS felt like entering a high-end private lounge. The cockpit was a study in American craftsmanship. Bucket seats wrapped in supple leather, real wood veneer accents, and a center console housing a floor shifter, something rarely seen in Buicks of the era. Instrumentation was elegant and aircraft-inspired, with deep-set gauges and chrome-trimmed bezels. Every surface was padded or polished, from the steering wheel to the door panels. Sound insulation was so effective that road noise vanished, leaving only the hum of the Super Wildcat V8. Buyers could add luxury options like air conditioning, AM/FM radio, power windows, tilt steering, and even automatic trunk release, features that screamed wealth in 1965. The 1965 Riviera Grand Sport was not for everyone, and that was the point. With a price tag exceeding $4,500, the equivalent of over $45,000 today, it was aimed squarely at the affluent performance enthusiast. Only 3,354 Grand Sport models were built that year, making it a true collector's gem even when new. The Riviera GS wasn't a street racer's car, it was a gentleman's muscle car. For those who wanted speed but refused to sacrifice class. It stood apart from raw muscle machines like the GTO or Chevelle SS. It was quieter, more composed, and infinitely more refined. Buick marketed it to successful men who wanted performance wrapped in prestige, a sports car for the country club crowd. Today, the 1965 Buick Riviera Grand Sport is remembered as one of the finest American cars ever built. It represents the moment when General Motors combined design excellence, performance engineering, and luxury craftsmanship into a near-perfect package. Collectors and historians regard the 65 GS as the high point of Buick's golden era, before emissions controls, safety mandates, and cost-cutting dulled the company's flair. Its blend of quiet power and timeless style has made it a favorite at classic car shows, often praised for its purity of design and mechanical sophistication. The 1965 Buick Riviera GS was more than just a car. It was a statement of taste, power, and self-assured luxury. It symbolized an America that built cars with confidence, when performance didn't have to come at the cost of comfort, and when elegance was just as important as horsepower. In an age of chrome and excess, the Riviera GS stood out by being beautifully restrained and devastatingly capable, the perfect expression of what it meant to be both fast and dignified. It wasn't just Buick's best car, it was one of the greatest American automobiles of the 1960s.
Number 2. By the late 1960s, Detroit's muscle car wars were in full swing. But while Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge were busy building machines for young hot rodders, Mercury, Ford's upscale division, took a different approach. It set out to build a car that could deliver brute force without sacrificing refinement. The result was the 1969 Mercury Marauder X100, a luxurious powerhouse that merged the raw aggression of a muscle car with the grace of an executive coupe. Mercury had long positioned itself as the bridge between Ford and Lincoln, appealing to buyers who wanted more luxury than a Ford but couldn't quite justify the price of a Lincoln. By 1969, the company wanted to enter the high-performance luxury market, dominated by cars like the Buick Riviera GS and the Chrysler 300. The answer came in the form of the Marauder X100, a car that embodied Mercury's dual nature, the heart of a street machine hidden beneath the skin of a gentleman's cruiser. It wasn't a stripped-down muscle car. It was a grand touring coupe designed for well-heeled drivers who wanted speed with style. The 1969 Marauder was based on the full-size Mercury platform, but its styling was unlike anything else in the lineup. The X100 had a long, low, and wide stance with a fastback roofline that gave it a sleek, muscular profile. Up front, a recessed grille and hidden headlamps gave the car a menacing, high-end appearance. Chrome was used tastefully, enough to communicate luxury, but not so much that it overwhelmed the car's aggressive posture. The X100 also featured unique rear fender skirts, brushed aluminum trim, and distinctive tail lamps that set it apart from other full-size Mercurys. Optional colors such as black jade, presidential blue, and candy apple red were often paired with vinyl roofs, emphasizing the car's luxury duality. It looked every bit the part of a muscle car for executives, a car that could park at a country club or smoke its tires on Main Street with equal confidence. Under the hood was what truly defined the X100, Mercury's mighty 429 cubic inch, 7.0-liter Thunderjet V8, producing 360 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. This massive engine gave the Marauder effortless acceleration, 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 7.5 seconds, remarkable for a 2-ton luxury coupe. Power was routed through Ford's Select Shift Cruise-O-Matic transmission, allowing both automatic and manual-style gear changes. The car came standard with dual exhausts, heavy-duty suspension, power front disc brakes, and 15-inch chrome wheels wearing fat white-wall tires. Despite its size, the X100 handled surprisingly well thanks to its sports-tuned suspension package, designed to keep the big coupe composed on winding roads. Still, it was most comfortable devouring highway miles, smooth, silent, and imposing. Inside, the 1969 Mercury Marauder X100 was pure luxury. It offered deeply padded leather bucket seats, a center console with a floor shifter, and full instrumentation, including an optional tachometer, a rarity in full-size luxury cars. The dashboard featured aircraft-inspired gauges, wood-grain trim, and Mercury's hallmark attention to comfort. Everything inside was power-operated: windows, seats, antenna, and even ventilation controls. Buyers could add air conditioning, AM/FM stereo with 8-track, and rear seat lighting to complete the luxury experience. It was a car built for the successful driver who wanted performance without sacrificing comfort. Someone who might have considered a Lincoln too conservative or a Mustang too youthful. Mercury marketed the Marauder X100 as the man's luxury car with muscle, but it entered a tough market. The late 60s saw buyers moving towards smaller, sportier muscle cars, while the full-size luxury performance niche was shrinking. Priced at around $4,400, equivalent to nearly $40,000 today, the X100 was expensive for its class. Only about 5,635 units were built for 1969, and fewer than 3,000 for 1970, making it one of the rarest performance luxury coupes of its era. Its exclusivity, however, only enhanced its mystique. Those who owned one knew they had something truly special, a muscle car that wore a tuxedo. Today, the 1969 Mercury Marauder X100 is often overshadowed by flashier Mustangs and GTOs, yet it deserves recognition as one of the most refined muscle cars America ever produced. It represented the end of an era when Detroit still believed big could be both fast and beautiful. Collectors prize the X100 for its rarity, engineering quality, and presence. When restored, it commands attention at shows, its long fastback profile and deep V8 rumble turning heads just as it did in 1969. Though short-lived, the X100 proved that performance and sophistication could coexist, a lesson few muscle cars ever managed to embody. The 1969 Mercury Marauder X100 was the gentleman's hot rod, quiet when cruising, ferocious when provoked, and endlessly stylish. It wasn't built for teenagers or drag strips. It was built for executives who wanted the thrill of power wrapped in leather ladle. In many ways, it was Detroit's last true grand tourer before the 1970s oil crisis changed everything. The X100 remains a shining example of a time when power met poise and when American muscle wore a suit and tie.
Number 1. By 1968, the muscle car wars in America were in full swing. Ford had the Mustang, Chevrolet had the Camaro, and Pontiac had the Firebird. But American Motors Corporation, AMC, the smallest of the big three, wanted to carve out a unique niche. Enter the 1968 AMC AMX 390, a daring high-performance two-seat muscle car that combined exclusivity, raw power, and American ingenuity. AMC was known for compact cars like the Rambler, catering to budget-conscious buyers. The AMX was a radical departure, a two-seat sports car designed to challenge the muscle car elite. Unlike the Mustang or Camaro, which were built on compact platforms and aimed at mass-market buyers, the AMX was exclusive by design, appealing to enthusiasts with deep pockets. AMC's goal was clear: deliver a powerful, stylish, and rare vehicle that could compete on both the street and the track. They succeeded, creating a car that was instantly recognizable and instantly respected among muscle car aficionados. The 1968 AMX 390 was small but muscular. Its low, wide stance and long hood conveyed a sense of speed even while standing still. AMC designers kept the lines clean, emphasizing aggression without excessive ornamentation. Short rear deck highlighted the car's compactness and performance focus. Long hood perfectly accommodated the big block 390 V8, creating an intimidating profile. Minimal trim focused on performance rather than flashy chrome, differentiating it from Detroit's larger muscle cars. The result was a sleek, purposeful silhouette, a car that looked fast, whether moving or parked. Many buyers appreciated its understated yet assertive styling, which appealed to those who wanted muscle without the mass-market, youthful look of a Mustang or Camaro. Under the hood, the AMX 390 was all business. AMC paired the AMX's lightweight chassis with a 390 cubic inch V8, producing 315 horsepower and 425 pound-feet of torque. This was no economy engine. The car could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 6 seconds, a blistering pace for 1968. Coupled with a 4-speed manual or optional 3-speed automatic, it offered a visceral driving experience, raw, loud, and utterly engaging. The AMX's light curb weight meant that the 390 V8 felt even more potent than similar engines in heavier muscle cars. Its handling, while not European grade, was nimble for the era, giving drivers a more connected and exciting experience than most Detroit competitors could offer. Inside, the AMX 390 balanced sportiness with minimal luxury. It was designed for 2 adults only, emphasizing driver focus. Bucket seats, firm and supportive, perfect for spirited driving. Center console, positioned the shifter and controls within easy reach. Simple dash layout, focused on gauges critical for performance, like a tachometer and speedometer. Unlike the more luxury-oriented muscle cars, AMC didn't try to overstuff the AMX with comfort features. It was raw, functional, and focused on the driver's connection to the road. AMC intentionally limited production. Only about 7,000 units of the 1968 AMX 390 were sold, making it extremely rare compared to the mass-produced Mustang or Camaro. This exclusivity appealed to wealthy enthusiasts and even celebrities who wanted something unique. AMC also marketed the AMX for racing, including drag strips and SCCA events, which added a performance pedigree that few two-seat American muscle cars could match. The combination of rarity, high performance, and AMC's distinctive style made the AMX 390 a status symbol among aficionados who wanted muscle without blending in with the mass-market crowd. The 1968 AMX 390 stands as one of the most courageous and unique muscle cars of the era,
It proved that a small manufacturer could challenge Detroit's giants by offering exclusivity, performance, and style in a package that appealed to serious enthusiasts. Collectors today prize the AMX 390 for its rarity, performance, and historical significance. Unlike many muscle cars built for mass appeal, the AMX 390 maintained its focus on the driving experience, making it one of the most exciting and collectible American cars of the late 1960s. The 1968 AMX 390 wasn't designed to dominate sales charts. It was built to deliver an exclusive, visceral experience. It combined the brute force of a big V8 with a lightweight, agile platform and a design that communicated confidence and sophistication. In a sea of mass-produced pony cars and muscle coupes, the AMX 390 stood apart, a rare, high-performance American muscle car for those who valued exclusivity, thrill, and refinement. It remains a shining example of AMC daring to dream big. A two-seat muscle car that only the boldest and wealthiest could call their own.